Welcome back, everybody, to match number 2 of the Americas broadcast. We have bloodyface versus Nalguidan for you coming up. My name is Soto, joined once again by Abar, who, for those of you keeping track, is now on his 4th series in a row, because this man is an absolute machine, as anyone that's seen his shirtless pictures on Twitter can attest to.
Oh, I wasn't ready. I so was not ready.
No warning.
I needed a good laugh, though. Appreciate that one.
Glad to be here in the Americas region. I set this one up, like when I first saw this bracket of the players that were involved, I think this is a real cream of the crop situation for the Americas region. I've had some fun at the Americas region expense, being, you know, a European myself. I'm very proud of the standard of play that we have, but I think we've had some incredible players up until this point. I think we saw an excellent series, even though I did take a little bit of offense to saying that you didn't want to cast a clown fiesta of a game alongside me.
Oh.
I like a good fiesta, just as anyone else does here and there.
Do. I just feel like it's Dan's brand, right?
Is, yeah.
Fiesta hair.
Yes.
Fiesta. That man comes ready to party.
It was a very Frodan series. Different colors of Evolve all over the place, but now we have another serious matter in front of us, and it's Nalguidan versus bloodyface. And I make no qualms about admitting that I'm a big fan of bloodyface. Ever since he rocked up to his first championship event and was very well-spoken, but also very openly critical in places, which I think is something that's lacking in a lot of Hearthstone players, is that he was willing to fire some shots and call some other people out and say that certain things aren't good enough for other players, and I'm a big fan of that, and he backs it up by holding himself to those same standards.
If not for the unbelievable run that Just Sayin went on over the course of 2018 Hearthstone, bloodyface, in my opinion, would have been the player from the Americas region,
right,
the standout performer. Unfortunately, he got overshadowed by just an unbelievable run by Sayin, but there is absolutely no shame in that. And speaking of the man, this is the man in Latin America right now. He has 2 times in his career been 1 match away from punching his ticket to a Hearthstone World Championship. He currently stands 2 matches away right now, Saddle. Is this the day he finally gets it done?
There's no dirty rat to slow him down this time, as that was very much his demon in one of those encounters. Of course, he is also fighting for the pride of South America and Latin America, because he would be that representative for that region at a climactic end-of-year championship event for Hearthstone that we have not had. So I'm certainly picking no favorites in this one. I think either one will be a very deserving player to take that spot from the Americas region from Season 2.
Absolutely, and kicking things off expectedly, we might say, with the Priest Mirror, bloodyface, another single silence gamer. Of course, the second copy of silence is particularly useful in the mirror, but it appears both players have had the gentleman's agreement to only play 1 copy of that one. So here we are.
I do still like it. I like the 1 copy of silence. I think a lot of the cards that you look at that you replace with that second copy of silence a lot of the time, you do lose a lot of opportunity cost in other matchups, as well as even just against Priest. I think going down to 1 Pyromancer to improve your matchup in the Priest Mirror is not necessarily a good thing to do. And we finally did see the impact that Pyromancer Topsy-Turvy can have on the Priest Mirror, I believe, yesterday. So for me, I think 1 silence is good enough, because it's generally, you know, a single effect that, sure, it's a backup plan, you know, it's a panic card. It's not something that's a consistent strategy for you to even be winning the Priest Mirror, and it can be a very, very dead card in other matchups.
I've got more left in me.
Bloodyface has the optimal start on the coin with the injured Tolvir here on turn 1. Nalguidan can now check this with with Power Word Shield, followed by an Inner Fire, value trading over the injured Tolvir, and this looks like a convenient spot to fit in a circle as well if he so chooses. As you have mentioned multiple times, it can occasionally be difficult to get value out of that card in this matchup, but the top-decked injured Blade Master significantly changes the equation there.
It does indeed, yeah. I still maybe would have liked to see it for those reasons you're describing. Did you see now it does just become a little bit ugly. He could have had preemptively had that minion be a 4/4 here. But we saw this same situation come up, I believe, in Casey's series, where just for the cost of 2 cards to his opponent, he let that cleric draw cards just to maximize tempo on his side of the board. Now, this is a different situation, because I believe Casey's play involved clearing his opponent's board while drawing him cards, whereas that is not the case here for Nalguidan.
Very much not the case, although Nalguidan still might similarly value stats on the board, over cards in his opponent's hand, which is perfectly reasonable. Looks like he is going to reach for the circle nonetheless and shake his head in dissatisfaction along the way, perfectly illustrating his internal turmoil that we have laid out for you folks.
No hugely impactful pickups here for bloodyface, though. Apart from the ability to draw a ton of cards. It's a weird world in the Priest Mirror, guys. I'm sorry, you're looking at a hand that's like there's a pyro, a spell, and a circle of healing in this hand. There's a cleric on the board. What are you talking about? You're absolutely right to raise that objection, but when I say nothing massively impactful, I mean nothing that immediately addresses this board state and gains tempo for bloodyface.
The number of times over the past few days you have been utterly underwhelmed by 0 mana drawing 4 cards. It's truly something to behold.
It's nice. I'm not going to turn it down, but I would have preferred Inner Fires and similar things that turn.
And the cleric has done its job in a sense. Bloodyface's hand is nice and full, but I fear its time on this board soon to come to an end. Back over in Nalguidan's camp, he continues to be able to play proactive tempo turns here. Psychopomp, a nice development on turn 4 here, even if the Resurrect pool isn't optimal.
It's nothing right now, I believe. I think that's just a 4-mana 3/1. The first minion he played was this Beaming Sidekick that has continued to live throughout the turn. He went turn 1 Sidekick, turn 2 buff it up, turn 3 played the Blademaster.
Very true.
No minions dead at this point.
Job's done.
In which case the second Sidekick is going to enter the fray here.
Now this is where Bloody can potentially start to turn some of this card advantage into a winning position for him, because with the High Priest Armet in hand, he does have the ability to start overloading some of these stats in the coming turns. But until that point, he is going to fight from behind. And if Nalguidan can pick up another big draw like an Inner Fire, number 2, to start pushing huge damage with this Divine Spirit, might just be a turn too slow. And this is the point in the Priest Mirror. Like, bloodyface can have 9 cards in his hand all he wants. If he doesn't have the time to turn those cards into the tempo he needs, he is just going to die.
So then the question becomes, how does he seize that tempo? And Psychopomp looks like an attractive option here for a multitude of reasons that were not that Beaming Sidekick, frankly. There was a Northshire Cleric that could have returned to the board state, but more notably, an injured Tolvir that would have been resurrected and made bloodyface a much happier man in this situation.
Right. So Beaming Psychic has now finally bitten the dust, so Nalguidan's Psychopomp is at least live at this point, but still incredibly underwhelming. So I think that Pyromancer draw, allowing him to push some face damage here, threaten Inner Fire or Topsy-Turvy to end the game on the coming turns. It's a lot more appealing. Currently 11 damage on Nalguidan's side of the board, so if bloodyface was to put 14 health into play here with the Armet, he is entitled to think he will have a basis to buff from, to snowball from on the following turn, by which I mean he's likely to have a minion survive. With Divine Spirit Inner Fire in his hand of his own, doesn't take long for him to turn that back into an aggressive position.
Certainly does not. So step number 1 is how do we accomplish the objective of getting a single thing to stick, and bloodyface hovering over this Wild Pyromancer is thinking, you know what, the best way to do that might be to chip away at my opponent's board state first. The opposing Wild Pyromancer, of course, only at 1 health currently. Very tempting to get that out of the way.
Move quickly.
Kind of feeling this Armet personally, honestly. Like I said, this is just, I was talking about overloading the health. This is 14 health on bottom in play. It does give him the best chance to have some minions to work with on the following turn. But that now, for Nalguidan, this Blademaster's max health is way above 11, so he can deal 11 with that, 15, 18 this turn. Still a ways off. starting to represent lethal, and that Topsy being in hand could actually be very crucial, because Bloody might choose to initiate a race himself over the coming turns here, since he does have Divine Spirit and Inner Fire available.
With the lack of lethal potential, I expect Nalguidan to use this Topsy-Turvy a bit more aggressively, perhaps on one of his opponent's minions, to keep Bloodyface's board state in check.
I am confused.
I was expecting a 1-7 to turn into a 7-1 myself.
Obviously, he loses his Pyro for the sake of that, but that's fine. You then just trade your other minions over the Armet, and then you heal up one of your other minions, and you're chilling. This looks wrong to me.
So you can still take the 2 value trades, flip it into a 7-3. The Pyromancer trades in nonetheless.
Now, he still has a dead Pyro. He has less health on his minions on board, but he did get to play a Psychopomp, which he would... No, he still would have been able to do that. Yeah, this is just worse.
He missed a hero power, basically.
Yes, exactly.
On something other than the Wild Pyromancer.
He missed a relevant hero power.
Yes.
Talked about it a lot yesterday, about how many mechanics there just are going on in the Priest mirrors. It's not uncommon to see a player miss one. That might just open the window here.
I wonder.
Like I said, Bloodyface only needs a little bit of survivability and a minion to stick on board, and he can start being incredibly aggressive right back at Nalguidan here. Especially now he's seen 1 Topsy, 1 Inner Fire get used. The ability for Nalguidan to burst Bloodyface back is pretty darn high.
And at this point in the game, Bloodyface does have the luxury of using these Divine Spirits as tempo tools.
I like it. Yeah, okay, this makes sense.
Yeah, he's essentially giving up on that threat of lethal potential that you were outlining, because he's so far ahead on resources that he can play fair and win an arena game from this point.
Sure.
The one big kicker there is that Nalguidan has yet to find his Buon Samedi, and as far behind in this arena game as he is, at any given time, he's only 1 draw step from flipping that around.
That is very true. Cleric on board now for Bloodyface. I don't think he will afford Nalguidan the same luxury that was afforded to him of drawing free cards. I think when he has this advantage, it's the one advantage he does have right now is the resource advantage. He wants to efficiently deal with that Cleric while minimizing the amount of cards it draws. Looking at Psychopomp Acolyte is my initial instinct this turn. The Acolyte of Pain kind of offsets the downside of having a Psychopomp in play when there's a Pyromancer on the opposing side of the board. I think the Reborn minion gives you maximum stickiness to be able to extra arms through into the Cleric on the following turn.
I got you, friend.
Important part here being that this injured Tolvir enters the fray to contest Nalguidan's board development nicely.
Sure.
It also sets him up if he can get Nalguidan's Cleric off of the board to Nefreset Ritualist. Have this injured Tolvir grow out of control.
Yikes.
Divine Spirits, less good when you have a Wild Pyromancer and they have an Acolyte of Pain.
Yes. Does kill the 2/4, and it does keep the Cleric alive against various options from the opponent. But it also draws a card off their Acolyte. It also sacrifices your Light Warden to their 1/1 Beaming Sidekick. So pros and cons at best, I think, from that Divine Spirit being cast that turn.
Extra arms followed up by more arms allows the Acolyte to value trade over the Northshire Cleric. Beaming Sidekick then clearing off the Light Warden as well. All of the resources over on Bloodyface's camp at the moment. Nalguidan running out of draws that aren't that Bwansamdi that would allow him to compete back in this game, with Clerics falling by the wayside.
Nalguidan going to heal pass. No merit to just throwing minions into his opponent for value trades right now. He needs to hold on to these minions to try and get an Armet board anyway in the tiny fraction of a percent world where he wins this game. Amplified all the more so by the fact that there's just an Acolyte of Pain on board that it would just be free card draw for. But Nalguidan passes back, gets the unfortunate news that his opponent did in fact play some cards that turn and decided that that was good enough for him to get out of that Priest Mirror. He is going to go down 0-1 in the opener here. Priest Mirror going against him. What's he got to fight back with now?
Bloodyface's Priest out of the way, but that is an expected result on both of these players' parts. I think when you look at the lineups, you think Priest is going to win at some point in both of them. It is the tertiary and fourthiary decks in the lineups that are the bigger concerns on both players' sides.
Quaternary?
Sure.
I believe. I think that's right. Citation needed. Someone tweet me. I think that's right.
Yeah, from Bloodyface's side here, obviously Priest down, he could lean more towards the Druid or Hunter. I have talked a lot about how I think the Hunter lines up particularly well against the Druid. The stats have backed that up over the course of Season 2. But for me personally, Kuhn is starting to flip the narrative.
Okay.
I have been significantly impressed by how just that one card seems to have improved the matchup more on the Druid side than the addition of the Ragnaros and the Call of the Wild actually improved the matchup on the Hunter side. Agree, disagree, thoughts?
I certainly agree that Kuhn has a big impact. Just whether or not it has enough of an impact to flip that matchup, I'm certainly not sure. I haven't put in the degree of testing that would be required there. I do worry about Malagos Druid in particular, though, because just those few extra mid-game minions, those few extra dead cards, like, okay, maybe, sure, you can use a Moonfire to clear a key position in a certain situation, but there's a Mali, there's a Geppetto, there's a Dream Petal Florist, there's an Emperor, all of these things that you're going to draw that are potentially just way too slow to commit against a Hunter who can just deadly shot any given one of those minions and jam you in the face with everything that they have in play. So I do think that Druid, Malagos Druid variation has to carry more dead cards in it in this matchup than just a regular Quest Druid, so I'd be interested to see whether that comes into play.
Speaking of dead cards, there are very few of those in Bloodyface's Highlander Hunter deck list that you are looking at currently. Some other variations of Highlander Hunter run the Secret package. The Secrets sans Rat Trap are very bad against Druid. Bloodyface perhaps wanting this Highlander Hunter in his lineup as a Druid counter, part of the reasoning here. He removed all of those secrets and he's playing a much more proactive game plan. He's got that Ragnaros, that Call of the Wild in there. I know you favor a build that looks a lot like what we're looking at right now.
I do, yes. I certainly do not like the secrets being in there. I will say, again, like big picture, maybe coming into this tournament, you really want to be like building your deck for Priest. I think against Priest, the secrets that's the one matchup where the secrets, like even against a good player, they have some significant impact. You're generally going to give them trouble against Rat Trap. Pressure Plate is obviously a big kicker in a lot of situations, and even Freezing Trap. We saw the situation, right? I think Dan even called out the irony of the no secret deck being face down with the 16-15 that couldn't be killed or whatever. A lot of the secrets would have had the chance to disrupt that. But outside of that one matchup, I think against the best players in the world, they will pick apart your secrets. Like, you are much better off just playing stats onto the board as quickly as you possibly can with Hunter.
Looks like a full 3 keep out of Bloodyface. The inclusion of tracking is actually quite noteworthy, as the majority of Highlander Hunter players at this point have opted to remove that card. But with the heavy hitters that you see in Bloodyface's particular build of Highlander Hunter, it's no surprise to me that he might want to dig for one of those more proactively than the average Highlander Hunter player does.
I mean, I personally am baffled that a Highlander deck that has the ability to play the card tracking would not. Because what a Highlander deck is, kind of by definition, is 28 cards and 2 cards that are the entire reason you play that deck. So why wouldn't you want to search in your deck for those cards? It's so bizarre to me. Particularly when there's cards like Sandbinder, for example. Like, there's multiple cards that get you to your Zephrys. So tracking can very consistently find you a Sandbinder or a Bran or a Zephrys. Now there's just like a Rag that you can find as well, which just makes that even better. Like, I don't know. You just play tracking. Like, surely that has to be right.
I certainly do think there's merit to the fact that this Highlander Hunter deck wants to be playing a 1-drop on 1 a significant portion of the time, and therefore tracking is a card that you don't want in most matchups in your opening hand, like bloodyface has kept it in this one. But against Druid, he knows that he has time to go ahead and use his tracking. Now it's more about the mid-rangey threats that he will have developed a few turns from now. That's what will decide this game. But yeah, I mean, tracking when you're 15 cards deep into your deck and you very clearly know exactly what you're looking for at that phase of the game seems excellent to me. So I don't know, maybe we cut one of these high-end resources to just put a tracking back into our deck?
That's where I would be at. Yeah, I'm not playing it as a 1-drop. I'm not cutting any early game to play tracking. I'm not playing tracking in the early game if I can play minions instead, right? Like if I have resources in my hand, I'm going to spend those resources first, and I'm going to play tracking afterwards. But yeah, less big boys and one card that helps me draw specifically my Bran or Zephyrus more often just sounds superior to me.
Engaging TC-130 into dislocator.
3-3 go.
Sounds about right. Malagos Druid, Mind Control Tech is a very effective card against a regular Quest Druid, but Malagos Druid, you know, you're not looking at a Cenarius in there, for example. The Oasis Surges are still there, but it's much less common that they make that big board in the mid-game that you can swing against with Mind Control Tech.
I like this from Nalguidan. Mind Control Tech in the immediacy presents a larger number of stats on board, obviously, but it does not take much. You give the Hyena an inch and it will take a mile. And along with later on in the game, the threat of more beasts being developed in the immediacy, Nalguidan could be fearing the Houndmaster on turn 4,
right,
which is very reasonably could be in Bloodyface's hand in his play for that following turn.
Yeah. Luckily for Nalguidan, the 4-drop that comes down is about as weak as it could have been there. He would have been scared of Houndmaster Shore. He would have been scared of the Houndmaster if he had left a beast in play. But it's pretty much the same effect as unactivated Houndmaster as he just drops the Spellbreaker as a 4-3. Just decided his MCT was being a little bit loud, you know? Told it to shut up for a second.
He does have an awfully nasally voice. Yeah. That sometimes gets to me as well.
No one likes hearing that voice. You play 4 minions, you start to dread hearing that voice.
Mental dislocator, all right. I'll tell you that much.
Yep. Zephyrus for an animal companion. I think Bloodyface waited as long as he responsibly could before he played that Zephyrus, because, of course, the threat of it doing much more powerful things later on in the game is something that you always want to look out for. But he was under no circumstances willing to miss a turn of his curve. So the first turn where he did not have a play that was not offensively bad was the turn where Zephyrus came into play to fill out the curve.
Baited Arrow coming in clutch here, an excellent tempo turn from Bloodyface. He is about as big of a Baited Arrow fan as there is out there in competitive Hearthstone, I would say.
Yes. Another reason why I very quickly became a fan of Bloodyface when he turned up to a championship is that I have been banging that drum to multiple people on multiple occasions. Like, why aren't people playing Baited Arrow when Ziliax exists as a card and those two cards line up against each other like on curve? That's an interaction that's going to happen. And then Bloodyface turned up with Baited Arrow in his deck and we asked him about it and he said, well, Ziliax is a card and those two cards line up against each other on curve. Why wouldn't you? So, yeah, this guy's smart. I like this guy.
There's one thing Sada likes. It's hearing that his own thoughts are good.
Yes. And I thought, you know what? Bloodyface could do with a Dino Tamer Brad this turn. And apparently that is also a good thought. Unless you are a Nalguidan fan, as he grimaces the thought of this dinosaur crashing him in the face and making the big noise.
So even if Nalguidan double swipes this King Crush here with the help of his Innervate, Moonfires the Mind Control Tech, that leaves him taking 2 damage off Dino Tamer Brand, followed by 8 damage off Ragnaros, which means he is dead. It is by far the logical play based on the information Nalguidan has.
Yup.
So he's going to take it. He's going to have to accept that Ragnaros is going to end this game. Bloodyface is about to be 2-0 in the series.
And that, like, okay, his 6-7-8 was pretty exciting, but up until that point, that was not a particularly strong Hunter curve.
No.
He played a Scavenging Hyena on 2 that was just a 2-2. He played a vanilla 3-3 on 3. He played a vanilla 4-3 on 4. and then he played Zephyrus Animal Companion on 5. Like, that is not particularly powerful sounding, but it's the power that Hunter has, where when they get towards the late game, they back all of that up with so much extra damage because of cards like Kill Command and Weapons and Dino Tamer Brand and Ragnaros, that all it takes is a couple of minions, because Druid isn't doing anything. You just need to play some things, and then you hit them with them. And again, I think that's another matchup where, like, just some things, some minions, some idiots that you can play on the board, as opposed to just secrets that are going to do nothing in the matchup, can be a big benefit.
Yeah, it's just about keeping them busy. You know,
Yeah.
as the Highlander Hunter over the first few turns, you want to give them something that they are forced to use their removal on to at least respect well enough to prevent themselves from taking pressure. But the phase of the game where you win as the Hunter are those turns 7, 8, 9, where you have those massive power spikes. If it goes too long, the Druid's incredible efficiency with cards like the Kun that I mentioned earlier starts to take the game over again, which is why you see this deck constructed the way it is, because it takes the most advantage of matchups like the Quest Druid for the Hunter side.
So Priest over the line comfortably for bloodyface, Hunter over the line comfortably for bloodyface. Now he has to fall back on this Druid, and is, to me, a pretty unusual looking build of Druid. He has gone with the Geppetto Joybuzz in a non-Malagos build of the deck, and he's also running that Chef Nomi, which not too many players are in this one. It's very, very greedy in that regard. Cenarius, Geppetto, Kun, Chef Nomi, and still the Zephyrus and the Elise in there as well. That is all of the late game.
And the good news for Nalguidan fans is, even though bloodyface is down to just this Druid that he needs to win with, we are looking at some deck lists that have decent game against Druid. Combo Priest and Highlander Hunter conventional wisdom would say that both of those decks have favorable matchups. Malagos Druid over the course of Season 2 of Grandmasters, the Quest Druid was marginally favored over Malagos Druid. I think that is aligning with conventional wisdom as well. If you ask a lot of the Grandmasters players, they would agree they would rather be on the Quest Druid side of that. However, I'm curious if the addition of Kun unlocking opportunities for faster lethals that we haven't seen in the past out of the Malagos Druid could perhaps come into play there. So there is reverse sweep potential here.
Sure. I think it's been a big talking point for all of us this weekend, right? Is like, exactly where is Druid positioned in the metagame? Because it does seem like one of the decks that have struggled to get a foothold. The wins that we have been seeing from them have been largely going up against Shaman, which is not something we really expected to see going into the week. But regardless, it does seem like a deck that is a little bit ill-positioned in a lot of the matchups that will come out. But a lot of players just continue to believe in the raw power level of the deck.
And rightfully so.
Is someone injured?
Speaking of raw power level, is anyone injured by chance?
No coin sidekick from Nalguidan. Bloodyface responds by snap decision, skipping his quest and wrapping away that cleric.
Oh yes. So the motive for not coining that sidekick on Nalguidan's side, if you look at his hand, should be quite apparent. He's got an injured Blade Master to coin out on 2, injured Blade Master to play then again on 3, Psychopomp to back it all up if it sticks.
Counterpoint. That was a Northshire cleric.
Counterpoint.
Yeah.
Bloodyface just expended his Wrath to clear off that Northshire cleric, which means it's actually relatively unlikely that either of these two injured Blade Masters get cleared, while Bloodyface wants to just be passing the turn anyway, which means Psychopomp is a Northshire cleric.
Ah, excellent. All right, I'm on board.
Power takes
Poison low T, I expect. Yes, it is. Pretty common play in the matchup, just to get ahead of any icky situations of big minions coming down in the early game. Bloodyface still now only on 2 out of 4 procs because of that Wrath skip. It's something that you will always see coming out from Quest Druid now in this matchup. It is not about completing your quest, it's just about not being dead before turn 7. And then if you complete your quest on turn 7, fine. Like, you will take that.
So the counterpoint
Sure, all right, next level.
is that if we did play the Psychopomp this turn, of course not the Lodi would poisonous and be able to clear off the front half of the cleric, but there are more clerics to come.
Job's done.
A welcome sight for Nalguidan. Bloodyface chooses to expend this Poisonous Lodi to clear off an injured Blade Master, that also does bolster the Psychopomp pool in ways that Nalguidan is happy with. Bloodyface could make a 5/5 rushing Oasis Surger here. Value trade over an injured Blade Master. Value trade his Poisonous Lodi over this Northshire Cleric. And all of a sudden, he's got 2 minions that directly contest the remaining injured Blade Master still left around on his board. The risk there, of course, is Wild Pyromancer. Could devastate his board position from there, and it would also involve foregoing a proc on the Druid quest, which is something that, frankly, I feel is not as much of a liability in this matchup as a lot of other players do.
Right.
Something Tice has echoed in his winter interviews after taking down the priest from the Druid side, is that you might as well take your time as the quest Druid completing your quest. Where Bloodyface decides this is the most appealing option on board for him.
I do. The 5/5 play was interesting to me after you suggested it, because I think you also have a slight indication that Pyromancer wasn't in hand, because your Poison Loti even survived through the turn, right? Like, sure, it would be a specific hand of Pyromancer and a couple of spells that would be able to take care of it, but we do see that the Pyromancer was picked up off the Cleric draw that turn, I believe, which means Bloodyface would have got heavily punished for making that play. Nourish Mana here would complete the quest. Would take him to 9 on the following turn, which is far less exciting than taking him to 10 on the following turn, based on this hand.
So here I suspect we see the 2/3/3s version of Oasis Surger, as we do. This Cleric off the board. Clerics are scary. That's why Sottle was so unhappy about losing his on turn 2 of the game.
Still so much pressure coming through here. Only one spell available for the Pyromancer though, and no way to draw additional spells this turn. Which means these 3/2s will hang around to fight, but they are still not doing much, even just vanilla on the board. Trading out with a 3/1, and then this other 3/2 really not having a huge impact either. It's just how that affects the break point for this Starfall in Bloodyface's hand now for the next turn as well. Starting to just climb into this game is Bloodyface.
I wonder.
Depending on how Nalguidan leaves the board state at the end of the turn here.
The nice thing about developing the Acolyte this turn, which I am in favor of, we see Nalguidan reaching for it, is that if Bloodyface does choose to Starfall some of the larger minions, that means that multiple cards will be accrued off of this Acolyte of Pain. Something he's very much interested in, as we have harped on a bit over the first 2 turns of this game. Nalguidan is down Clerics, both of them, they are gone.
I'm upset with this turn.
Go on.
Well, so one Oasis Surger was used, right? So the scary card is Starfall. That's now twice as likely as Oasis Surger in the scenario, and the Loti was used early for Poisonous on the board, so you don't have to worry about that either. So to my mind, the #1 priority this turn was just make a huge freaking Blade Master that couldn't get countered by any of those cards, and instead of playing Divine Spirit, Nalguidan put his health buff from the sidekick on an Acolyte of Pain, which great draws cards, but isn't a relevant offensive threat to the opponent right now, and put a 2/3 on board, which doesn't do anything because it's dying to the 3/2 that was in play anyway. He does draw the Inner Fire, which now means that he has lethal immediately on the next turn.
So your play was dumb.
Okay, yeah, fair enough. I believe my Giant Blade Master would have done the same thing this turn, just saying.
Well, all's well that ends well, as they say, Sottle.
Yeah.
Nalguidan will be securing game number 3 with the Priest.
Yeah, but I do just feel that play Nalguidan made just left that window where Bloodyface, could affect the board enough that there wasn't much power into play, and then suddenly just another power card from the Druid the next turn, right? Like be it just a hidden Oasis, just to stabilize, or just something like that could start to swing the game around. Whereas Giant Blade Master is just something that their deck doesn't deal with at that point. Like, the Loti's gone. It's the only thing that deals with a Giant Blade Master. So I was a little bit surprised to see him go down that line, but maybe that was his thinking, right? Just digging through deeper. Maybe he set up better against, like, specifically Hidden Oasis that turn. That wasn't something that I had time to look at. So there may well have been justifications that I'm not considering, but it looked strange to me.
Yeah, I agree with you. All jokes aside, the reason that I liked the development of the Acolyte in that turn in particular is I was expecting a large injured Blade Master coupled with it that I thought bloodyface would be interested in chipping into. So I'm not sure that the Beaming Sidekick needed to also be used on our Acolyte. The 3 health breakpoint seemed sufficient to me.
And then the Psychic could go on the Blade Master alongside the Divine Spirit, which was my play that turn. Acolyte, Psychic, Divine Spirit. But nonetheless, we are here now, and he got over the line, and that extra card draw from the Acolyte of Pain in either world pushed him towards that Inner Fire, which found him the lethal at the end of the game. But as Abar has been telling you guys, that is a 75% win rate matchup for the Priest throughout Hearthstone Grandmasters, so no great surprise that Nalguidan gets 1 on the board there. But now with the Priest down, we have the Hunter and the opposing Druid coming up here. You've already broken this down a little bit, but now bloodyface is facing down these 2 decks. Obviously he's a favorite at 2-1 up, but how big a favorite do you think he is?
The Hunter more so than the Druid. I think the Hunter is fairly significantly favored over the Druid, which is why I expect Nalguidan to be queuing that one next if I'm following the pattern. Look at that, right on cue. We see an indication that Hunter is what's coming next out of Nalguidan. And the reason that this deck is favored over the Druid, well, we sort of saw it play out on the reverse when bloodyface was piloting the Hunter. These late-game threats, specifically Ragnaros, was an excellent inclusion in this deck. It has always historically been powerful against Druid, basically ever since Big Game Hunter has been nerfed. If I can make a callback to that. Notably, Nalguidan does not have the Zul'jin in his deck, though. He's running the Call of the Wild without the 10 drop to follow it up.
Yes, indeed. This is pretty much call this a modified Zalae Hunter or a modified Muzzy Hunter, depending on where exactly down the chain of inheritance you want to pick up. He is playing a similar deck to bloodyface's philosophically, where he's not playing the secrets, instead putting in extra minions alongside it, but he's gone much more mech heavy. So he gets access to cards like Venomizer, for example, Spider Bomb, really, really powerful cards against Priest, first and foremost. It's a good call to have them in your deck for that reason, which is why I like when you're cutting the secrets. For the explanation I gave earlier is that you're losing some disruption against Priest by cutting those secrets. I do like this mech list where the secrets are replaced with those poisonous and Death Rattle Destroyer minion cards that can have just as big an effect on the matchup.
And in this particular build that Nalguidan is taking advantage of, Nightmare Amalgam is just delightful. It is an elemental to draw out of your deck. It is a mech to snip-snap onto. It is a beast that you can use a Houndmaster to buff. What more could you ask for?
Absolutely nothing. In fact, you have the opportunity to do both of those things. It's rather bizarre looking when you have like a magnetized snip-snap on an Amalgam, which you then Houndmaster afterwards. It's pretty sweet.
It's also a totem.
Yes. Very important for those day 1 Evolve decks that were running Thing from Below, but I think we navigated away from that quite quickly.
It's a Murloc, which is relevant to Zephyrus.
Yep. Got any more in there?
I think it's a dragon.
Yep. It's also a pirate, just in case you evolve into a South Sea captain somehow. Are we done?
It's also a demon, which is relevant to Zephyrus.
Yes, that is true. Sacrificial Pacts. Zephyrus, the card, while it exists, also for that same reason, probably just deletes Jiraxxus from the game. Like, that card is just not playable because of that little Easter egg interaction, I guess, between those 2 cards. Hunting Party. That was into the hand for Nalguidan. Unfortunately, Dino Tamer Bran, the card itself is not a beast, and therefore can't be duplicated by that card.
Unfortunately? Hold on now. Sure about that one? Do you want that interaction to exist in Hearthstone?
Sure. Unfortunately for Nalguidan, unfortunately for fans of just seeing sweet things happen in particular games.
Oh, imagine if we played Hunting Party Dino Tamer Bran. If Bran was a beast, then we could then Emperor both of them down. Uh-huh. Yeah. Go hunting party, huh? Hunting party Bran in the same turn, followed up with another one.
I like where your head's up.
To my side.
Meanwhile, Bloodyface's head is probably thinking right now, boy, those look like some juicy value trades for my Oasis Surgers. Fortunately for him, this Spring Paw is going to throw a spanner in the works.
It is indeed. Still is going to swing the board this turn because just those 2 Spring Paws alone do not represent challenging his Oasis Surgers here. But that swipe on the previous turn was crucial to be able to set this up and get that 1 damage on the Houndmaster Shore. Would be surprised to see anything but the Oasis Surger come down this turn, but as you may have heard in the interview with Bloodyface while we were on break, he does claim that he thinks about everything and considers that one of his characteristics as a player. He will consider some ridiculous options just to give them the time of day. But I think not playing Oasis Surger that turn would have fallen very nicely into that camp of ridiculous options.
Double Snip Snap is the more mana efficient play of the 2 between snip snapping here or developing the Ziliax. However, from Nalguidan's perspective, he may be considering that the expected outcome next turn is the Nourish out of Bloodyface, so Ziliax could clean up the remainder of this 5-2 Oasis Surger now, and then if Bloodyface does Nourish, then there's a decent chance that he follows that up by developing an Anubisat Defender, in which case he can Snip Snap Magnetize onto the Ziliax and value trade over the Defender quite efficiently. Does go with the conventional way of thinking here, it looks like. He's just going to develop 2 copies of the Snip Snap, debating whether or not he stacks them.
Yeah, I don't like any of these turn 7s you're describing that don't involve us playing a Dino Tamer Brand and smashing our opponent in the face with it.
Makes sense to me.
That's what I intend to do if my opponent plays Nourish.
Well, so here's the thing. In the world where that turn that I just described happens, our
With the
King
Anubisat
Crush,
Defender?
yes, our King Crush is trading.
Yes, that is
sacrilege.
Sure. But also doing it this way, he still has the same option, right? It's just he's let his opponent have a 5-2 for a turn. If it trades, it trades. Like he has Snip Snaps. They're not things that you really want to trade into anyway. So if his opponent plays Nourish, there's a good chance that he can just Ziliax on top of one of these Snip Snaps and trade through the Anubisat Defender anyway. So I'm okay with just, spend 6 mana on turn 6. I think it's reasonable.
There are also worlds where Bloodyface does not have the Nourish.
Yes.
In which case you spent the most mana, put the most stats on the board, and you've got this Dino Tamer all lined up.
Yes, and you also in all the non-Nourish words, non-Nourish worlds, sorry, played maximum tempo this turn so that you can use these minions to fight for the board if necessary, and then maximize the opportunity of Dino Tamer Bran actually connecting face. There's a lot of different ways to justify spending 6 mana on turn 6, but I think we got there.
Bloodyface is not a mind control tech within Quest Druid Gamer. So if he does play the Dino Tamer Bran here, there is no risk of him losing his King Crush to that effect.
Right.
You'll find me wherever the action is.
Trading into that Crystal Merchant is illegal this turn.
Done.
8 damage to face. Deal with this. The only slight problem Nalguidan will have had with this turn is that the fact that Crystal Merchant exists is irritating for 2 reasons. Firstly, it's alive and therefore continue to draw cards, and that's annoying. Secondly, it's that 1 point of damage to the King Crush that can make all the difference to the clearing power.
It's that second one that is much more a problem
Yes.
for Nalguidan than the first.
And that problem is not solved by you trading. So you just go face with that King Crush every single time. Strictly an illegal trade. Bloodyface now has access to Loti Starfall after picking up that copy of the Worthy Expedition, which is going to be huge for him potentially in the coming turns. You can see, though, just looking at this hand, just quite how greedy this Druid deck is. Already has his Geppetto, his Kun, and his Cenarius lined up, and there's still a Chef Nomi in the deck. There's still an Elise in the deck. There's still a Zephyrus in the deck. That is a lot of unplayable cards in the early and mid game.
Geppetto kind of smooths it out for a couple of the other ones, though.
It does. Hidden Oasis.
That felt big.
Certainly buys you some time to get to those greedy options as well. 8 mana 6/6 go was not going to cut it this turn, and even Loti Starfall was not exactly exciting this turn.
Which is rare to say.
Is it? If you actually use the Loti attack as well, does it become more exciting?
So you can proc the Divine Shield with the Lodi attack. You can then Starfall the Snip Snap.
Power.
3 1/1 minions are generated between the Snip Snap and the Mecharoo.
You can do it
This
this
is
way
better
because
order, yep.
3 damage. Well, not necessarily, because this way you're. I guess you just have a bigger Loti left in play after you make the attack, which I guess makes up for it. Yeah, sure.
Yep.
It's totally fine. Tracking. No beast currently in play or in hand means that a kill command pickup would not have been lethal there, I believe.
Correct.
Winds of the south.
Which leaves Tiamat as the only reasonable seeming option here. Divine Shield Rush makes perfect sense. It is a luxury in this matchup if you can afford to Divine Shield Wind Fury the Tiamat.
He could have done that though, right?
He could have Divine
And then
Shield
he
Wind
just
Fury.
trades a 1/1. His
Yes.
Wing Blast costs 1. He spends his mana, and he has a 6/6 Wind Fury guy on the board.
Right.
That
so
seems quite a lot better to me.
I agree. He's valuing a 1/1 and a Wing Blast in hand over the Wind Fury ability on the Tiamat seems questionable.
After he's already seen both Starfalls come out from his opponent on top of that as well.
Right.
I think the Zephyrus here being played from bloodyface is to give consideration exactly to this deadly shot that Nalguidan is sat on in hand. Does not want to just play Hidden Oasis, get it deadly shot, and just have all this damage pushed through again. Sorry.
Also serving the role of expanding bloodyface's board state, knowing that this Cenarius very well may be coming down next turn.
And bloodyface got there. In the words of Millhouse Manastorm, just you wait until I get to 10 mana. Bloodyface has found it, and now he has the big turns. 0 mana, 9/9, gain 10. Play some 4/4 taunts while you're at it. And that is the look on Nalguidan's face. A man that just got hit with the Kun.
Again, a reminder, there is no Zul'jin in Nalguidan's Highlander Hunter deck. There is a Call of the Wild we have not seen yet. A Ragnaros we have not seen yet. But Dino Tamer Brand is out of the way. The Tiamat on the board. Ain't getting it done here. He's running out of the Power Spike draws left to pick up off the top of his deck.
Yeah, and he used his tracking to pick up not a Zephyrus. That's not to say that Zephyrus was burned to the tracking. It's just, you know, tracking is one of those cards that he would use to fish for that card and didn't get it. But the No Zul'jin is just kind of an earmark of the Zalay Hunter style build, because you cut out cards like Unleash the Beast a lot of the time to make room for a lot more of this mech-based package. Zul'jin starts to become a little more underwhelming when you don't have that card available, but I am surprised to see Call of the Wild come in and then not have the Zul'jin alongside to support it. And now the clock can start rolling here for bloodyface.
I'll make you a real toy.
Really? I'm at Loti. I'm at Elise. Sure. I was very much in the Oasis Surger, clear my opponent's board, push 14 damage, play an Anubisat Defender, set up lethal.
You can still push 14 here with the use of this Lodi.
Sure.
If you haven't seen the interaction before between Lodi and Geppetto Joybuzz, it does reset to a 4-6.
Yes. Nalguidan, deep breath, rub of the face, and it looks like he is going to give that one up. Bloodyface finds his way over the line. That druid that he was left on at the end was perhaps looking a little bit vulnerable because of all the greed that it had going for it, but in the end, it was that greed that flipped the game on its head, because that conclusion alongside the Scenarius and everything else meant that as soon as he did hit that point in a stable enough position that his Starfalls and everything else got him to, that it was really just one turn, and then Nalguidan was like, well, can't beat that, I guess I'm done.
Yeah, very well navigated by Bloodyface, I do agree. I also am inclined to agree with you that there were some question marks I had as well that you articulated about that Wing Blast turn.
Yeah.
Maybe the Divine Shield Wind Fury on the Tiamat. I would have pushed more damage. I don't know that it would have pushed enough damage to have gotten him across the line there, but...
Yeah, I mean, we can theory craft how much extra damage that gets through. Like, you could maybe say 12, because if it's alive, as opposed to being dead as it was in that position, just because it had Divine Shield in it, then maybe it pushes 12 more damage. And Bloody was at, what, 17, 18 at the end of that game, and there was a kill command and hero power. Like, I don't know. Maybe it changes things. Maybe. I don't know.
Well, regardless, we will celebrate our winner here, and that is going to be Bloodyface at the end of this match. He advances to the finals to meet Purple. I believe, referencing again our predictions at the beginning of the day before we got on broadcast, of course, that is exactly what I laid out.
After Abar threw his predictions so badly yesterday, he didn't want to make them on broadcast anymore, so he had to do them in the quiet. Yeah, it's fine. You're a true caster now.
Yeah, for those keeping track at home, I have Purple in the finals, so you can hold me to that one.
And Casey also called out that he wanted to see Purple win here in Americas. Of course, if you weren't following earlier, Casey was victorious in the Europe playoffs just before we went live with this. He's booked his spot at BlizzCon, said that he's looking forward to playing against Fino, and also that he hopes to see Purple qualify so that he can play against him as well. So, of course, huge congratulations to Bloodyface, commiserations to Nalguidan, and Abar. Just, I believe this is now your final series of the days. Just want to give you a big thank you for stepping in and filling in for us, but we now have one more final series of the day coming up for you, the Americas Playoffs Finals for Grandmasters Season 2, Purple versus Bloodyface. Don't go anywhere.